A power system can make or break a shonen. If the power system simply isn't cool enough or creative enough, it can subtract massively from the battles that take place, and if you make an interesting enough power system, discussion can spawn from simply the mechanics of the power system and how things should work. How many times have you heard people talk about a mental imp in Naruto, someone's cursed energy output in JJK, or if the Death Note would work on Goku? A power system simply makes things much more interesting, and while I think a lot can go into whether or not a power system is good or not, I think there are ways to determine whether or not a power system is better than another one. So today we're going to be discussing which power system is better between Chakra and Cursed Energy. Chakra being more universally recognized as one of the best or the best power system, and JJK having the most well-known power system of today. Determining which of these power systems is stronger than the other isn't really going to be factored into this discussion, as on average most people agree Naruto characters, even at their lower tier, are stronger than the highest tiers in JJK, so the comparison just doesn't really seem fair. However, virtually everything else will be fair game when determining which system is better. We're going to mainly be putting them against each other in terms of a combat scenario, considering both of these power systems were built for battle shonen, and also uniqueness, or I guess you could say diversity within the power system. So if Cursed Energy is more suited for a specific part of combat, but Chakra's approach to that same situation is more diverse, we'll determine which stat is more valuable for that specific category. I also want to say, while Chakra and Cursed Energy do share the same trait of being a power system, they are not similar in a lot of aspects. For example, Chakra does not really have its own domain expansion type of ability. That's much more similar to Bankai in its use case. So if you're expecting me to compare Unlimited Void with Kiba's three-headed dog attack as some sort of gotcha to get JJK a free point, you're mistaken. But with all that out of the way, now we can begin. Enhancing your body and being a superhuman is the first thing that comes to mind when talking about getting supernatural energy, and as said before, we're not going to be directly comparing power here. Instead, we're going to talk about the different applications of enhancing your body that each power system obviously has. Basic body reinforcement is obvious, and neither one is really better at this than the other. Both shinobi and sorcerers can amplify their durability and drastically increase their strength with chakra or cursed energy, but where they differ is in the many different ways this can be applied. Cursed energy, aside from basic reinforcement, has a few different and creative ways to get stronger. Domain expansion and domain amplification are two that come to mind. Domain expansion giving you a buff in stats due to the environment as per Gojo, and amplification giving you the increased durability and the added benefit of lowering the output of the curse techniques fired at you. Black Flash also provides you with a pretty significant amp, not only putting you in a locked in like flow state, but adding 20% to your overall potential and allowing you to be much more creative in battle. Mahito used Black Flash to combine domain expansion and curse technique activation in Shibuya, and used his second Black Flash to awaken into his true form. Gojo, even with his extremely damaged brain, used Black Flash to recover his reverse curse technique output and figured out a new way to fire off Hollow Purple. Sukuna similarly got the same thing, and not only that, figured out a new way to expand his domain using a different part of his brain and a different hand sign. These buffs are all on top of the fact that Black Flash increases the impact of your punch exponentially, raising it to the power of 2.5. Curse Technique Disclosure is a rather interesting way to amplify yourself on both an inverse level and for us the readers. Nanami claims that revealing your curse technique to your opponent makes it more effective. It's probably some type of binding vow, which gives a reason for characters to explain their technique within the verse, when in other manga and anime you're kind of wondering why they would tell the other person what their technique does instead of just surprising them with it. Since I brought up binding vows, I might as well mention how they can amplify you as well. Mei says that binding vows, with the trade-off being your life, is the quickest way to raise your level as a Jujutsu sorcerer, and it's something she often uses. By having a crow make a binding vow to sacrifice its life, Mei creates an extremely deadly technique capable of one-shotting a special grade curse. She even implies this technique could reach the levels of the strongest, saying that Gojo, Sukuna, and Kenjaku all opt to dodge Bird Strike rather than take it head on, which should say something about the power they think it holds, considering all of them know reverse curse technique and can heal entire limbs if need be. Aside from that, binding vows can be used as a shortcut, but this sort of has a checks and balances system to it. Sukuna used his world slash on Gojo without having to do the hand sign required for it at the time, but in return, every time moving forward, he has to use the hand sign, chant, and guide the slash with his hand in order to use the technique. A binding vow that would be impossible to fulfill as a normal two-armed sorcerer, but Sukuna could overcome it by using his true form in four-armed. Speaking of chants, these are another way to amplify the output of your abilities. However, not many techniques seem to have them, and the same goes for hand signs. The last real way to amp yourself up with Cursed Energy and JJK is to get a flood of negative emotions and get them under control by turning them into Cursed Energy. This is fairly straightforward, but the entire power system is built off negative emotions and negativity, so more negativity can simply make you stronger if you're a capable sorcerer. This last example to amping yourself has nothing to do with Cursed Energy, it has to do with getting rid of it entirely, that being heavenly restrictions. Upon losing all your Cursed Energy or being born with simply 0, you gain insanely increased physical stats, and pushing to find your true self makes it to where you gain precognition, the ability to walk on air, and see the soul, which pairs nicely with the soul split katana. This amp technically isn't available to everyone because not everyone has the choice to get rid of their Cursed Energy, but it is something that can happen to multiple people. You just kind of need an insanely lucky chance for it to happen. I just want to mention that any stat increases directly tied to someone's innate curse technique aren't going to be mentioned here, since those amps technically are only available to one person, like Kashimo's Mythic Beast Amber or Mahito's Instant Spirit Body of Killing. To transition into Naruto's different amps, you have a lot here, but a lot less diversity. Most things here are just going to be a direct boost for your physical stats: the Curse Mark, the Raikage's Lightning Cloak, any Tailed Beast Chakra Cloaks, Mental Amps, the 8 Gates, Chidori, Boil Release, Hashirama Cells, 100 Healings, Shibai Cells, Elemental Advantages, all provide you with either a buff to your speed, power, or both. They all achieve it through somewhat different means, but the result is the same. You end up stronger than you were before you used them. Sage Mode and the different dojutsu, however, provide different types of amplifications, where Sage Mode lets you not only attack using the nature energy around you, but gives you increased danger sensing in the form of precognition and stamina regeneration once you get good enough at it. Naruto was able to use Sage Mode to finally figure out how to throw his Rasen Shuriken, something he'd later use in his KCM form. Not to mention, Sage Mode gives you access to a unique set of abilities like Frog Kata or Frog Strike in Naruto's case, the Gracious Deity Gates for Hashirama and his 1000 arms Shinshu Senju, and for Jiraiya, access to both Sage Frogs considering he needs them. The dojutsu I think are fair game, since even though they're similar to innate curse techniques and being something you're born with, we've seen people who aren't from the same lineage use dojutsu of that clan effectively, and to obtain them, one merely needs to defeat a member of said clan or take it off that person's corpse. Now, I already did a video on the Sharingan versus the Six Eyes where I go over the Sharingan in pretty good detail, and I'm pretty sure everyone already knows the abilities of the Rinnegan. So I want to talk about some of the lesser known dojutsu, like Ada's Shinragan. This eye's power is fairly simple. It just allows Ada to see any movement that has happened since the time of her birth. But what's really important about this is the way she obtained it, that being Shibai cells. Shibai is a god in the verse of Naruto, and his cells were implanted on different members of Kara. Applying the cells gave different broken abilities to some characters, and others it simply yielded no result. Ada got her Shinragan and Omnipotence itself, Code got his teleporting claw marks, Damon got the power to reflect any attack, and Kashin Koji got the ability to see all possible futures. This is really just Hashirama cells on crack. They merely offer a physical boost as well as advanced healing. Not to mention, if Hashirama cells reject you, then you can literally die, where Shibai cells just seem to not have any effect if they don't work. Of course, that could be due to how Orochimaru implants the Hashirama cells as well. This category is somewhat challenging to conclude on, as JJK has the more creative amps than Naruto, but Naruto undoubtedly has more amps than JJK. However, I think if we're talking about in a combat setting, like what was said in the intro, Naruto takes this category for having far more accessible amps than JJK. While JJK's Black Flash is a great example, it's mostly based on luck. Not even half the characters in the manga have actually even hit one. Domain expansions and domain amplification are also extremely great amps, but they are high level techniques most people won't get to use. Hand signs, chants, and binding vows are great and have gotten sorcerers out of extreme predicaments, but chants and hand signs only appear on a few curse techniques, and binding vows only help you with an extreme trade-off a lot of the time. Compared to Naruto, where a mental amp is available to anyone that has something precious to them being threatened, tailed beast cloaks can be shared by the end of the series, and elemental advantages come naturally, it's pretty obvious these amps are more accessible in a given combat scenario. Even the lesser ones like the lightning cloak and Chidori can be obtained by being good enough at lightning release jutsu, and the 8 gates, even though you can't learn how to open all 8, you can learn how to open one, and that's already a massive boost. Going back to what I said earlier, however, I do think JJK probably wins here in terms of how creative the amps are. Speaking your technique secretly boosting you, the fact that 95% of the hand signs for different moves are not the same, and the same thing when it comes to chance enhancing an ability. I also really like Cursed Energy's approach to hand signs, making them all dependent on the person and each person making their own hand sign, like in the case where they summon their own domain expansion, compared to Naruto's hand signs, which are more like using hand signs to put in a specific code by stringing already known signs together, which looks extremely cool, but I find Cursed Energy's approach to be a bit more unique and makes each one feel personal. I could get into how every hand sign is tied to some sort of deity, but to be honest, I don't really care for that stuff. Like I said though, this category is difficult to judge and all the information is actually there for you to form your own conclusion, but that's what I got. Healing is an important aspect to any prolonged battle, as it can be the deciding factor in how you're able to fight versus your opponent. So in this category, we'll go over the different healing abilities each power system offers, reverse curse technique versus medical ninjutsu. Hashirama cells won't be a part of this discussion because, as mentioned before, there's a chance that they could kill you just from being injected. Reverse curse technique kind of clears in this specific category. Aside from the 100 healing mitotic regeneration, medical ninjutsu is more like modern medicine used with chakra. Reverse curse technique users are not only more common than the users of mitotic regeneration, it's just shown to be blatantly as, if not more effective, with users being able to regenerate entire limbs and heal from certainly fatal wounds multiple times. In terms of using tons of energy, both healing powers have this drawback. Sakura and Tsunade offset this by storing a bunch of chakra behind the seal, while other characters in JJK have to get around it by simply having larger reserves of energy. Other than that, there isn't much discussion to be had in this category. It's pretty cut and dry. Lastly, I want to talk about innate curse techniques versus Kekkei Genkai, and I want to judge these not by the combat scenario metric I set in the intro, but based on how unique they are. I'm saying this because it's virtually impossible to cover this without a complete full-length video, so for now I'll talk about it this way, and in the future I will compare them in a full-length video, and if that's done by the time you're watching this, it'll be linked in the description. Moving on, specifically I'm talking about the Kekkei Genkai that are bloodline exclusives, not the ones that are made from a combination of chakra natures, as they don't mix as well with innate curse techniques. But things that do fit this are the Sharingan and its variants, the Rinnegan, the Byakugan, the Kaguya clan's bones, the Jogan, the Kesryugan, and the Senrigan. Curse techniques are essential for sorcerers, and while it is possible to not make it far without a curse technique in the Jujutsu world, according to Meme, only 2 people have ever made it to grade 1 without one, that being Kusakabe and Yuji Itadori. The latter of which gained 2 curse techniques later in the manga and would not have gotten as far without them. Curse techniques can differ even among the ones that are the same. For example, Yuji and Sukuna both have different versions of the shrine technique because of the era that their techniques had manifested in. For the most part, however, curse techniques are individualistic. There aren't too many examples of 2 people having the same curse technique, and even within them, most of the time people have 2 wildly different applications like Mai and Yorozu with construction. That being said, it's virtually impossible for me to sit here and list out every single curse technique that we've been shown in the manga, which by my count is more than 50, not even including the extension techniques. I think it's safe to say, even including the Sharingan's Mangekyo variants in each individual user's Rinnegan abilities, which would total into the 30s at that point, that innate techniques have the advantage here. That's again without mentioning any of the extension techniques that these curse techniques can have. Curse techniques also just have way more variety to them. Hikaruma's domain comes standard with his curse technique, and it's literally a courtroom where your opponent can be sentenced to death. Hikari's domain is a gambling casino where he can hit a jackpot and become immortal. Naoya and Naobito use a curse technique based on frame rate. Gojo uses a convergence of an infinite series to keep his opponents from touching him. Nanami has actual critical strikes as his curse technique. Mahito can transfigure your soul. Miguel's curse technique lets him dance to avoid your moves. Takuba's curse technique makes anything that's funny to him come true. And there's just so much more variety to curse techniques, it's hard to say that they aren't at the bare minimum more unique than the Kekkei Genkai. And that's not to say that those abilities aren't unique. I would hope, considering the track record for my channel, I don't have to explain that, and I'm not here to downplay Naruto anyway, and I'm just being as objective here that I realistically can be. I could deep dive into every curse technique and every Kekkei Genkai, but I don't really want to be here for 3 hours, and I'm sure you don't either. So when it comes to diversity and uniqueness, I think JJK takes it a lot of the time with its more creative and modern type of abilities. Chakra is better a lot of the times in a combat setting, however, and the repeated use of iconic and simple moves like Chidori or Rasengan are clearly effective considering how many people like them. I'm honestly split on which one is a better power system. If you value uniqueness more, then Cursed Energy is probably your pick, and if you value combat more, then it's probably Naruto. In my own opinion, I'd probably pick Cursed Energy.